Next up, we have Spectrum reporter Sarah Pilla moderating a panel titled Gold Medal Venues, Winning with Sustainability, along with esteemed guests Peter Davies from Verv, Lee Robinson from Dyrt, and Maggie Baird, founder of Support and Feed. Please welcome everybody.
All right. Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a great day so far. And if you've been here yesterday, excited to get our panel started. And I think, one of the things that's really great to highlight is the fact that LA28, this is the first game in 80 years to not build any new permanent venues. So we're utilizing all our existing stadiums and arenas. So that's certainly a good way to start when we think about sustainability, but obviously behaviors are also another massive part of that. And so Maggie, I wanted to start with you because you have a lot of experience in this realm. First with Support and Feed, and then your daughter, Billie Eilish, international superstar, you guys have produced a sustainability tour. So would love to lean on you to learn what some of those practices were with Billie's tour, and also the work that you do with Support and Feed when it comes to sustainability.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here in this room with all of you who are dedicated to this. It's super exciting. Support and Feed is an organization really dedicated to addressing the intersection of food insecurity and food equity and climate change. And so when there's massive programs to feed people, our belief is that those programs can be also taking into account the effect that food has on climate change. And so we're feeding people meals that are not only nutrient dense and delicious, but are plant-based and climate friendly and very healthy. So that is our intersectional mission of Support and Feed. We're in 11 cities. We started in California during the pandemic, but we've now spread to 11 cities and we work international. We're really trying to help move the needle to a more equitable plant-based food system. We provide our meals almost entirely to community organizations, largely in food apartheids, to address the inequitable food system. And along that line, we've been really lucky to go on tour with my daughter Billie, but also many other artists as well. And when we're on tour with artists, we are not only promoting plant-based meal options at venues, but feeding people in local communities. Because a big part of our mission is really to promote the idea of community offset in addition to climate offset. So when you have institutions like the Olympics or a music show that are really affecting communities, you're also providing for that community. So providing food, providing healthy meals that are better for the planet. So that's one of the things we do. We also table, we meet all of Billie's fans or Paramore's fans or Metallica's fans, and we talk to them about how they have an impact on climate by what they eat. Now on Billie's tour, this tour was a world tour that started over a year ago. And really from the very beginning of that tour, we had sustainability in mind. So that started with which venues we actually chose. So a lot of times in a city, you're actually offered maybe two, maybe more venues. And so whenever possible, we choose the venue that already has more sustainability built into what they're doing. That happened very recently. I won't name the venues, but we make the choice based on that. And then we come in with a pretty heavy rider of requirements. We insist on no single-use plastics. We insist on plant-based food options. Our minimum is 3 main plant-based food options for concessions. Of course, we love it when venues lean in heavily, as many of them did. Many went fully plant-based for the show. But we insist on at least 3 mains. And then we have things, backstage. We have composting, we have local catering, we have plant-based food, we hire a consultant to help make all the food plant-based. And then we do things, even our merch is highly sustainable. Everything is upcycled, recycled, collabs with upcycling companies, 100% organic. We don't give fans a plastic bag for their merch. And we have lots of opportunities for learning throughout the venue. We have an eco-village where fans can meet the Reverb team, meet the support and feed team, take our pledge to eat at least one fully plant-based meal a day, meet local community organizations so that they can get to know their environmental organizations in their city. So it really is, and we also have Support and Feed does plant-based food drives at the venue so fans can bring plant-based food and it can go to local community organizations. We provided public transport, or we provided, I should say, free transportation for fans in cities that did not have good public transportation. We worked with Google Maps to promote the transportation so all fans could go on Google Maps. They could map out their public transport route to the show. And they also could find all the plant-based food options within the vicinity of the arena. In some cities, however, sadly, LA is one of them, where there was really not adequate public transportation. We paid for it, we provided it. So we had shuttles around the city. I think we did that in Arizona as well. So we provided that public transport, and we really made a party out of it. And another thing we do that with also help with Support and Feed, we really amplify all that. So we do a lot of storytelling around it. We have storytelling, we have plant maps that tell you where you can find food in the arena. We promote it heavily on the know before you go. So every fan who's coming to a show knows they can bring their own water bottle. There will be ample water filling stations. They know where they can find food. We even have provided for like where will the tents and the camping equipment go after the show for the fans who do camp out, and we have a plan for the waste and the food. So it's pretty comprehensive. We have a video that plays twice before the show explaining it all to the fans. I will say we also had a Changemaker ticket, which is basically, it's basically the premium ticket. So the best seat in the house had a higher ticket price as it typically does. However, the entire lift of that ticket was donated to climate organizations. So it's pretty comprehensive from start to finish, every little aspect that we were thinking about. And we really involved the fans in the mission, and they were really excited to do that.
Yeah, very much so. Very intentional, it sounds like. And I think that the venues here have an opportunity looking forward to these games coming here to really think about a lot of those different aspects of sustainability that you guys implemented. Lee, you're also in the waste diversion field. You do composting. Can you kind of talk about some of the barriers that venues are up against when it comes to waste diversion? And I think also the behaviors that spectators need to be active participants in. Obviously, we were talking before this, you have fans that come to these games, maybe after that third beer, thinking about throwing their cup into, the appropriate bin is not top of mind. So how do we kind of cohesively, both with the venue and the spectators, try to make this as waste-free as possible?
I like the idea of playing a video twice before anything actually starts. That would probably make a huge impact. But when you think of venues and I'm with Dyrt, we make dirt, is what we like to say. We also do the whole sustainability tracking of your downstream waste, which most people don't think about. And the majority of that waste is produced first in the kitchen, in the back of house. And then after that, it goes to the front of house. And if you're buying a $17 hot dog, you're probably going to eat that entire hot dog. But if you're using compostables, that compostable can be very confusing because they have a little number on the bottom that could be the exact same number as a recycling number or look identical to recycling. So with the venues we work with, we typically test their products and make sure they do actually compost. And then they tend to do a full or nearly full transition to compostable materials. So that's kind of step one. You eliminate as much of the trash as possible. Step two is having very clear signage. If you are selling 1 million hot dogs a year, you are probably putting every hot dog in the exact same container. And that container should go in this bin, or your reusable cup should go in this bin. And you start to get a higher adoption rate. But if you have kind of a mixed stadium and people are bringing in stuff after maybe the third or fourth inning or the third quarter, you get a couple drinks and you start to see a lot more contamination going into those bins. Some stadiums do sort that out back of house afterwards. Other ones just send it off and hope that it does get sorted at that point. The goal, though, is to capture as much as possible before that risk happens. And so 80% of the volume of, say, food waste, which is our specialty, is actually produced in the back of house. And then training them, which is much easier than training 60,000 fans sitting in seats to sort, will make a much larger impact. That's always the place we recommend starting. From there, recycling, cardboard pallets, plastics that are easy to recycle items. It's all about tracking that data and then taking action against it. So when you can see the actual pounds or the tons that are being produced every week, every month, we can now accurately predict the poundage that's produced per ticket sold in an event, and then help reduce that upstream, which also reduces F&B purchasing, which increases donations and drives not only just a bill savings aspect, but a total social and environmental aspect across the board from beginning to end.
Okay. Well, from waste diversion, we also have energy reduction with you, Peter. So we're not building any new buildings here. So when it comes to energy reduction strategies, what can the existing venues that we'll be using, how can they basically have the best strategies to reduce their energy?
Yeah, sure. I think it's one of the great things about this LA Olympics is the fact that you aren't building any new buildings. So any budget which every other city has had to use to create a new stadium, like London, we had the beautiful Olympic Stadium, you can actually use to retrograde and improve the existing infrastructure that you have. And you have some incredible stadiums here. And I think putting the effort and time into putting the correct management and metering into those stadiums to be able to track the energy consumption being used, and then share those best practices across each of the other stadiums to show where you can get the kind of main benefit. We very much focus on the air conditioning side. So we have a product which sits on the switch disconnect of the air conditioning unit to track the energy management in real time and provide that data back to say if there's any anomalies in your system. Because a lot of these stadiums, they start with kind of a big VRF system or big air conditioning unit, and then when new offices or areas open up, they end up putting in new split systems or new bits of functionality to kind of manage the air conditioning. So it ends up being a bit of a mix match. And what our product does is allow them to kind of have that capability and view over all of their data. And I think putting that into all the systems, making sure that every air conditioning unit is tracked, but also the other large electrical equipment in the building is going to be very key. And I think another interesting point that we've focused a lot on, certainly in California with your air, is we can track and tell if the coolant is leaking in the air conditioning system. And coolant, for those that probably don't know, it's almost 2,000 times worse than any carbon going into the atmosphere. And a lot of these systems leak. So having some kind of future predictive maintenance built into your air conditioning system to be able to pick that up before it actually happens is really powerful. And I think it builds into the kind of clean air initiative that you have to be able to put in this bit of equipment. So going into all these stadiums and putting in data management, energy monitoring, energy management, but also coolant detection, I think is a really powerful thing. And then sharing that across all the stadiums. And what I loved about the Olympics in London is everyone was on the same team for once. All of a sudden, you're not competing, you're not trying to be the best, you're all on the same team to make the games as best as they are. And sharing those best practices and the data of your building, I think is a really powerful way.
Now, what about the fact that we have we have the Coliseum right there. That's obviously a much older structure than something like BMO Stadium. So are there different challenges based on the year that some of these were built when it comes to the energy reduction strategies?
Yeah, massively. We have the privilege of doing a lot of work in the UK on the Premier League football stadiums. What's interesting is you have some of the older stadiums are not necessarily the most energy inefficient. Actually, Tottenham Hotspur, who's one of the brand new stadiums, I think it's the second most energy intensive building in the football stadiums in the Premier League behind Wembley, because the capacities are getting bigger. So therefore, okay, you need more infrastructure. But again, being able to retrofit all of the energy AC units that they had and being able to share that, we'll see, does it need upgrading? Is it coming to the end of its life? Do you need to upgrade to the new system? And I think it's just having that balance of data. And I think that's the key driver, is making sure everyone's on the same system. Because energy is energy. No matter how old the unit is, this 20-year-old, you'll see whether it's pulling more energy than your brand new system and covering the same amount of power. So yeah, I think it's just having the kit in place to doing the managing and monitoring is very important.
So for all three of you, venues have a big opportunity to be as sustainable as possible for these games. So I'm curious maybe what your biggest piece of advice to many of these venues would be in your various specialties of how they can start, what they should implement, and what that timing looks like with the games 2.5 years out. Maggie, if you want to start.
Well, I mentioned everything from, merch to obviously the big one we all know is transport, and fan transport really being the largest cost. But the thing that is overlooked the most, which I just really have to focus on, is food. Food is actually the thing that we have the most control of, and MIT has just released, well, I don't know if they've released it yet, but food is the second largest contributor of events to the climate crisis. So we just tend to take food off the table, strangely, in the climate movement, but really focusing food. The more plant-based food that can be on the menu, the more the default version. We added to what we were doing on the tour. I neglected to say that in the last portion of the tour, we learned a lot from the early part. So we added culinary trainings to what we were doing. So we were able to meet with every arena and culinary staff and talk to them about the impact of food, the hows and whys, and even the cost savings that we could help them reach by adding more plant-based food. And then offered also advice on supplies, etc., recipe creation, how do you label a menu? So I would just say the biggest thing I would just say is please do not stop thinking about food. You cannot underestimate how much of an impact that has and how much that is one of the things we can actually control the most.
And when we think of timing, is this still enough time to maybe train the staff and get this up to speed?
I will say just enough time, though, because I do believe the ordering starts in January. And so it's really important that this is really on people's mind now, because you don't want to get behind. It is extremely important that you train your staff, because a lot of things happen at the staff level. Not only do you have to create recipes, and especially if you do it now, you can implement that cost savings factor as well. But you could end up with delicious, amazing food, and then you really have to have enough time to train all of your, not only culinary staff, but your staff on the ground who actually serves the food, because that can sabotage things quite easily.
Yeah, and I will say, I think it also gives a good opportunity when you're saying delicious plant-based food for maybe people who are a little adverse to eating that way. The games, if they provide that, could maybe awaken something in someone, right? That this food actually is good. I might want to go eat that when I go back to my home city or my home country.
Well, can I just say that I think plant-based food, we've had this indoctrination and we've had a massive disinformation campaign lodged at us in the past several years. And what that means is when I say plant-based food, some of you you're picturing a mass-produced plant-based burger by one or two brands. Plant-based food is most of the food on the planet. Let's just be honest. It's all the fruit, it's all the vegetables, it's all the grain, it's all the rice, it's all the beans. That is plant-based food. So we have to get out of this terminology and just think of it's gorgeous, beautiful food that is abundant on our planet. And also, forget the disinformation that's been lodged at us. If you look at the scientific information, the number one thing that human beings, especially in the United States, are lacking is fiber. Fiber. It's not protein. No one's dying of a protein deficiency. It is fiber. And fiber is in fruits and vegetables and plants. And this is the Olympics, the source of the healthiest athletes in the world. So we could make the food the most fantastic food you've ever had. And we're just talking about making a default menu, right, that is largely plant-based. So there is plenty of time to make delicious, amazing food. And I think, by the way, the Olympics are 2028. The tide is turning, and fiber is really now on the tip of everyone's tongue. And so I think I think you have to be ahead of the game and realize that people are getting on the appropriate bandwagon that science is supporting.
All right, Lee, for you, as far as waste and compostables, what can venues do and start doing now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back to what's been said many times before. Bad data in is bad data out. And food is one of the most wasted items, and we personally deal with that wasted item. So please eat your entire lunch today. But it's one of the easiest ways to reduce cost and make the biggest impact. If you look at all the options, and I know we need to upgrade our grids and electrify our fleets and build better public transit, but the two biggest carbon impacts you can make are replacing your old bulbs, and that's incredibly cheap. The next one is reducing and diverting all of your food as much as possible. It's going to cost you 1/16 the cost of replacing windows or putting in solar panels and have 10x the actual carbon impact. So everyone should just start with the data side across all the issues, all the challenges, and then start taking those approaches. We have, 694 days? Did I get that correct? Yeah, so roughly. So it's going to take a while to get that data, but after that, it's pretty simple to implement a lot of these really minor changes around food and menus and what happens downstream, but that also affects the upstream as well.
And every single one of these venues that we'll host has the capability to do this, and with this, the amount of time until the games, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, you're a decent-sized venue, 100,000 pounds per month if they are in season, and you multiply that by 4 events at each stadium for 30 days straight, that's going to add up pretty quickly on impact there.
Can I add to that, that when you're looking at waste, the impact of animal agriculture is much heavier than the impact of fruits and vegetables, et cetera. So we don't want to waste, but if we are wasting, one of those categories is a much bigger impact.
That's a great point. And Peter, for you, so 2.5 years ago, many different venues, different energy consumptions. Can they all implement strategies to really reduce their energy use?
They can. Technology's out there. It's very quick to implement, not very costly to implement at all. And almost all these technologies have an ROI of less than a year. So actually they'll be paying for themselves before the Olympics even starts. And I think one of the things that came out of Paris was with the heat and the amount of air conditioning, that one of the biggest problems they had was keeping everywhere cool because a lot of the stuff was breaking down. So the thing I would shout the most about is putting in the predictive maintenance tools now into the air conditioning units, because like in the stadium next door, if their equipment is on the edge, now's the time to find out about that, not when it's on solidly for 2 weeks and you have 10 million people going through your system. So I think putting in the correct monitoring, management, and predictive maintenance tools is going to be a lifesaver. And I know everyone wants to do it, so it's getting the funding, getting the budgets, and making it happen sooner rather than later. I think it's very key.
Yeah, that's right, because it's happening in the heat of summer, and everyone's going to need to stay cool. Is there anything, I just want to open the floor to all three of you, if there's anything you want to say that I haven't asked you as we're nearing the end of our time here.
I'd say we're not facing a lot of challenges, we're facing a lot of prime opportunities to make an impact. And I think everyone in this room really believes in that, and we should all reiterate that and believe that we are not facing anything but the opportunity to make a difference starting today. By the time we get to LA 28, that we make ourselves better than Paris in this example.
I echo that. I mean, California we're ahead of the game in so many ways. I'm so proud to be, I'm so relieved to live in California, let's put it that way. And we can lead in this regard. There's no reason why when California hosts the Olympics, we shouldn't really soar in these categories. It is an amazing opportunity.
I'm excited about being here. One of the reasons I'm in LA is the Olympics. London 2012 was probably the best 2 weeks I've ever had in London. It's the place to be. It's an incredible vibe. So much kind of community. Everyone, the people that don't like the Olympics leave for those 2 weeks, so you have an incredible time surrounded by amazing people. And it's just good vibes. And I think California, you have a brilliant reputation for air quality. I'm constantly quoting your stuff when I'm in London. And you have an ability to lead on the sustainability. And I think my biggest hope is that you achieve all the goals that you're talking about here. I'm going to do my bit to help, and Lacey are clearly doing their bit to help. And if everyone achieves what it is, it's going to be an incredible Games. I'm looking forward to it.
That's right, lots of opportunity here, and I hope people are able to lean on all of your expertise to make this as sustainable as possible. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you for your time.